Hello, sixth graders. So let's review how to divide fractions by a fraction and dividing fractions by a whole number. So when we divide fractions, we remembered that to divide a number by a fraction, you multiply the number by the reciprocal of the fraction. So dividing is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. Now you might remember the keywords that says we keep, we change, and we flip. Now, a lot of people remember the KCF, but why does KCF works? Because dividing is the same thing as multiplying. We're changing the division into a multiplication, and then flip means by its reciprocal, so we flip the number. So what's a reciprocal? So let's go back to the basics. Now, a reciprocal is when two numbers, when multiplied, will give you 1. So in other words, just flip the number. For example, 4/7. So 4/7, you flipped it, the numerator becomes the denominator and the denominator becomes the numerator. So just like 4 will be at the bottom and the 7, the denominator will be at the top. So why does it work? Because when you see here 4/7 times 7/4, if you multiply straight across, that will give you 28/28, which is equal to 1. So to divide a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. So let's see some examples. Now, it says find 1/3 divided by 2/5. Again, multiply by its reciprocal. Multiply the number by its reciprocal. So keep, change, flip, KCF. So now we need to flip 2/5. So 2/5 becomes a 5/2. So that will become 1/3 divided by 2/5 equal to 1/3 times 5/2. Then multiply straight across, 1 times 5 and 3 times 2. That's going to give you 5/6. So the answer is 5/6. You can pause or listen to it again for you to get a clear understanding. Now, what if it's dividing fractions by a whole number? So again, we know that a whole number is an improper fraction. It's the same thing. 5 is the same thing as saying 5/1. So when we divide 3/4 divided by 5, it's the same thing as saying 3/4 divided by 5/1. So now the same thing, keep, change, flip. We multiply by its reciprocal. So the right term to use is dividing is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. The keep, change, flip is just a shortcut. Now, again, so 3/5 divided by 5 is the same thing as 3/4, I'm sorry. Divided by 5 is the same thing as 3/4 times 1/5. So keep, change, flip. So you got 3/20. Okay? So let's set some examples. All right, so let's try this out. Write the reciprocal of a number. So reciprocal means when two numbers multiply together will equal to 1. Or just flip the number, make it easier. So 5/12 is the same thing as 12/5. Now you can pause the video and give me answers or do it on your own for 3 and 2 and 4 and then play it once you're done. So 14, again, a whole number is the same thing as 14/1. So that means the reciprocal of 14/1 when you flip it is going to be 1/14. And for number 2, it's going to be 10/3. And this is going to be 4/22. Okay? So this is the reciprocal of a number. Now, let's apply division. So divide. Write the answer into simplest form. So when you say simplest form, it means that no number except for 1 can be divided evenly into both the numerator and denominator. So let's work on that. Now, we got 3/8 divided by 15/16. So again, we'll do keep, change, flip. We multiply the number. Times. We multiply the number by its reciprocal. So it's going to be 16/15. Now, there's two ways to do this. The first way is just the traditional way where you just multiply straight across, right? So 3 times 16, that's a large number. So 3 times 16 is 48. Over 8 times 15, that gives you 120. Now, is this the simplest form? No, it's not, because other than 1, you can divide 2 here or you can divide 4 here. So we need to simplify this. Now, if you're good with your multiplication facts, you would know what the common factor of 48 and 120 is. Now, some people would say, hey, can I divide by 2 first? Of course you can. Some people say, why 2? We can use 4. Definitely we can use 4, and you can use other numbers. So let's try to use 4 instead. So we're dividing this by 4. We know 4 can go into 48 how many times? 12 times. 4 can go into 120 how many times? 30 times. Now, can we still simplify this? Yes, we can. We can simplify this by dividing by what? 6. Because we know 6 times 2 gives you 12. So 12 divided by 6 gives you 2 over 30 divided by 6 is 5. So this is the final answer. Why? This is the simplest form. You can only divide by 1 to 2 and 5. Other than that, you don't have any number that you can divide evenly to the denominator and numerator. So that's the simplest form. Now, there's another way of doing it, and what I call cross-canceling or cross-simplifying. Now, 3 over 8 times 16 over 15. Now, I prefer this method. You know why? Because when you simplify, when we cross-simplify, we can reduce the fractions that we multiply first before we do our answer. How do we simplify? How do we cross-simplify? Easy. So cross-simplify means a cross. That means we're going to divide out a common factor of the numerator and its opposite denominator. So this 2 right here. So what number? So we're going to look for a common factor, the greatest common factor of 3 and 15, the numerator and its opposite denominator. So what factor can you multiply to 3 and 15? And we know if you're good with your multiplication facts or you can use your multiplication table, it's 3. So 3 divided by 3 gives you 1. 15 divided by 3 gives you 5. Now, what common factor can you divide to 8 and 16? Again, please know your multiplication facts, and that's going to be divided by 8 and divided by 8. 8 can go into 8 one time, 8 can go into 16, or 16 divided by 8 2 times. So now we have simplified our factors. So 1 times 2, now we can multiply straight across. So 1 times 2 is 2. And 1 times 5 is 5. And you are done. So instead of me dealing with these larger numbers, I would just deal with the smaller numbers and make it easier for me to multiply. This really works, and it will really, really help you out if you study how to cross-simplify. Now, let's try number 6. So number 6, we got 5 over 16 times 12 over 5. Now, you can multiply straight across again if you want to. Again, we do keep, change, flip before I forget, so you won't get confused. We multiply by its reciprocal. So 5 times 12 is 60, and we got 16 times 5 is 80. See, that's a big number. We can divide it by 10, and that gives you 6 over 8. We can divide it by 2. That gives you 3 over 4. So again, we divide this by 10. Then we divide this by 2. Now, how do I know what numbers to divide? Again, 10 times 6 gives me 60. 10 times 8 gives me 80. You need to know your multiplication facts. Again, 6 and 8, we can do 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. So 2 is the common factor of 6 and 8. Another way, so if we use cross-simplifying, it will be fairly easy. So look what happens. What number can you divide out from 5 and 5? Your numerator and its opposite denominator. It's 5. So we can divide this by 5, and we can divide this by 5. And that gives you 1, and this gives you 1. Now, what number can you divide out into 12 and 16 evenly? You can say 2, yes. You can say 4, yes. Between 2 and 4, I would go with 4, because I know 12 is 4 times 3, and 16 is 4 times 4. So 4 is the common factor. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. 16 divided by 4 is going to be 4. Now we're going to do 1 times 3, multiply straight across now, is 3, and 4 times 1 is 4. Makes life easier. So what if it's a whole number? So we're dividing fractions by a whole number. So if it's a whole number, we can do this. Here we go. If it's a whole number, the same methods. Because a whole number is the same thing as an improper fraction, which is 12 over 1. Now, again, we do keep, change, flip. When we're dividing, we're multiplying by its reciprocal. Reciprocal means we flip the number. So 4 over 15 times 1 over 12. Again, 2 ways to do this. If you, I'm going to write down 2 ways. Make it easier for you to see. So again, if you multiply straight across, 4 times 1 is 4. 15. Imagine you're multiplying, and you can't use a calculator. 15 times 12. So it's going to be 180. Now, some of you might be able to use a calculator. You're allowed to, but some are not. So 4 over 80. Now, let's simplify. Now, 4 over 80 can be divided by what? Say 2 or 4. We can do 4. If you want to do 2, we can do 2. So let's start with 2. So 2 over what's half of 180, and that's going to be 90. Now, can we still divide 2 and 90? Yes, because 2 means 2 times 1, and 90 is 2 times 45. So we can divide by 2. Again, if you don't know what numbers to multiply, be sure to review your multiplication facts. That's going to be 1 over 45. So the answer is 1 over 45. Now, easier way. Instead of doing multiply multi-digit numbers, I can just cross simplify. Do the so my numerator opposite denominator. What number can I divide to 4 and 12? And we know it's gonna be 4. When you cross simplify or cross cancel, make sure you're dividing by the same number. Okay? Don't say this is 4, this is 12. Or this is 2, this is 3. Make sure that it's the same factor. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Now 15 and 1. What number can you divide to 15 and 1? There's no other number that we can divide evenly except for 1. So, any number multiplied to 1 is that number. So it won't change. So keep it the same. So now let's multiply straight across. 1 times 1 is 1. 15 times 3 is 45. Makes life easier. Right? Now, either of these methods are okay. I'm just showing you the easiest way, and cross-simplifying or cross-canceling is the easiest way to do multiplying or dividing fractions. All right, number 10, the last example. Let's try this out. So 8 over 15 divided by 20 over 1. Again, a whole number is an improper fraction with a denominator of 1. So keep, change, opposite. Keep, change, flip. Multiplying by its reciprocal, so 8 over 15 times 1 over 20. Now, if I cross cancel right away, it will save me time. So this is 1 over 15. It won't make any difference because 1 is the common factor. 8 over 20 would be dividing by 4, dividing by 4. 4 is the common factor that we can find into 8 and 20 that we can use to divide evenly. So this becomes a 2. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 20 divided by 4 is a 5. Now we can do 2 times 1 is 2. 15 times 5. And that's going to be 75. So then we're done. So again, review this video. You can practice more if you want to. Hope this helps.